3 to 4 times more than in 1956. It has put a load in the atmosphere of carbon dioxide of 750 billion tons. It used to be 580 billion tons. But that carbon, that is pollution caused by tapping the carbon we should never have touched, the carbon we should have allowed to rest in the earth, is really not the only form of carbon. There is living carbon, the living carbon in the trees. And the reason this meeting and conference is so important, it makes us think once again of living carbon embodied in biodiversity. This is the renewable carbon that both mitigates climate change and can help us adapt to it. Biodiversity for me is the alternative to fossil fuels. Everything that we derive today from the petrochemical industry has an alternative in biodiversity. The synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, the chemical dyes, the sources of mobility and energy have sustainable alternatives in the plant and animal world. In place of nitrogen fertilizers, we have nitrogen-fixing leguminous crops and biomass recycled by earthworms or by microorganisms. In place of synthetic dyes, we have vegetable dyes. And on our farm in Dehradun, on the Navdanya farm, I planted about 3 years ago a forest of diversity to never forget that everything humanity needs could be provided by trees and plants if only we protect them, replant them, and rejuvenate them. And of course, my favorite is that in place of the automobile, we do have camels and horses and bullocks and donkeys and elephants and boats and limitless avenues of mobility that do not destroy the planet, including our lovely cycle, and in India, the wonderful hawkers. Just a platform of wood with 4 wheels can take you anywhere to bring any good and any service without putting even a kilogram of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The problem of carbon pollution leading to climate change is a consequence of the transition from a biodiversity-based renewable carbon economy to a fossil fuel-based non-renewable carbon economy. This was the transition that was called the Industrial Revolution. It was made possible with the ability to burn in coal through the internal combustion engine and transform it into usable energy, which could do work humans and animals used to do. So not only have we got more and more carbon dioxide being put into the atmosphere, way beyond Gaia's capacity to absorb and recycle. Every bit of fossil fuel used in a machine is somewhere getting rid of human creativity. It's getting rid of human contribution. One of the things that really annoys me as a scientist is the fact that when there is talk of producing more, it's never the resource efficiency that is looked at. It's never the issue of, are you producing more food per unit land? Are you producing more food per unit energy? Are you producing more food per unit water? It is always, are you producing more food per unit labor? Which basically means, can you get bigger and bigger combined harvesters on the land, cut down every tree that comes in the way? In the Mediterranean area, here in Europe, farms have included trees. And in India, we have had more trees on farms than forests. If you add that biodiversity together, in fact, it's the small biodiverse farms of the world that have much higher productivity, if the productivity is measured biologically, ecologically. But the fossil fuel age was an age that created energy slaves, as Amory Lovins has referred to. And we just assumed we were reducing work, but what we were actually increasing was a burden on the planet. As is often said, there is no free lunch. If we have to have a post-oil economy, and we will have to have it, both because the atmosphere cannot take more burning of fossil fuel, but also because fossil fuel itself is running out. All the experts who know about the oil economy tell us that at most within 5 years we will have the peaking of oil, that we will have taken out more than there will be left to exploit. A post-oil world is an imperative, whether you look at it from the resource end or you look at it from the pollution end of carbon dioxide emissions. But unfortunately, humanity is playing tricks with itself and the planet, because we are locked into the industrial paradigm of doing things, a very limited paradigm in terms of how long humanity has lived through industrial methods, but also limited in space when you think of how few human beings are locked into it. The majority of the world lives beyond industrialism. And it's that part of the world that is today being destroyed. It's being destroyed directly for all that expansion of palm oil and soya. It's being devastated indirectly by having to bear the worst impact of the increasing droughts, the increasing floods, the increasing cyclones and hurricanes. Our ideas of the good life are based on production and consumption patterns that use fossil fuel. And we cling to these patterns even while climate chaos is telling us to wake up. To move beyond oil, we have to move beyond the addictions of the fossil fuel infrastructure of industrialism, including the addiction to a certain model of human progress and a certain model of human well-being. To move beyond oil, we must move beyond spatial and temporal exclusion, the exclusion of other species, and the exclusion of large numbers of human beings. To move beyond oil, we must re-establish our partnership with other species, with the forests, with the soil, with the earthworm. And the economics of partnership with other species is the other carbon economy that we have to rebuild. The renewable economy is based on biodiversity. Renewable biodiversity economies redefine progress dramatically. They redefine development. It redefines development, developing and underdeveloped. To be developed in the fossil fuel paradigm is to industrialize, have bigger and bigger superhighways, more and more concrete, more and more industrialization of our farms. To be underdeveloped in the fossil fuel paradigm is to have non-industrial fossil fuel free system of producing our food and clothing, providing our shelter and our mobility. In the biodiversity paradigm, to be developed is to be able to leave ecological space for other species, for all people and future generations of humans. We have a wonderful Upanishad which says that this wonderful creation has been made for the benefit of all species, and every species must meet its needs in such a way that it cooperates with other species and leaves enough for their needs. To take more than you need, this Upanishad says, is to be a thief, because you are usurping on the ecological space of other beings. Now, unfortunately, what has been called progress, what has been measured as growth, has been this economics of theft, of taking from nature and taking from other cultures. And on this theft are built all the luxuries and excessive non-sustainable consumption that leaves everyone dissatisfied. For us to be underdeveloped is to usurp the ecological space of other species and communities. Those slides we saw of what is happening to the Amazon and to the Indonesian rainforests are examples of a very underdeveloped civilization. We repeat